Welcome to the Buy and Sell Real Estate podcast. I'm your host, Frank Garay, and today I am joined by a good friend of mine who I've known for a long time, Curtis Stocking. And Curtis, what's the name of the real estate company you're with?
United Country Greenfields Real Estate.
United Country Greenfields Real Estate, which is kind of a teaser into what Curtis really specializes in. So, Curtis, how long have you been in the real estate biz?
About 16 years.
16. And what's
Yep.
what do you focus on? What's your kind of your niche?
I focus 100% of my time on rural lifestyle properties, and that to me, rural lifestyle is agricultural is a big part of my business, whether it's an orchard, a vineyard, cattle ground, to the smaller hobby farms. It's a lifestyle, and just any sort of rural residential, if it's in the mountains or on a lake or just a little farm. It could be 5 acres or 500 acres. But that's really the specialty, anything outside.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I'm just curious, what drew you to that? Why you get into real estate, you've been in it for 16 years. Most people think I'm gonna get in there and sell houses, but you focus on rural, ag, farm, hobby farm, mountain, what drew you to that? Why?
Well, I grew up in the country, used to deliver diesel fuel to a lot of farmers. My old life,
Yeah.
And just being out there in the farms and the countryside I just like it. It's fun, it's diversifiable.
Yeah.
And, I don't know, it's just different, right? It's away from the normal rat race to me.
It is.
The people, I don't know if they're any different, but they're definitely living a lifestyle and they just love to share, their memories or whatever of the country.
Yeah. So what's your market area? Like, how big of a footprint do you cover with these types of properties that you list and sell?
My primary focus is 3 counties, 2 of them primary, Solano and Yolo, 100% all the time. Creep in the Napa, only because there's some good vineyards land over there. And so that's my really focus. I have always had customers drag me up to Lake Tahoe because they want a vacation home, and so I do a little bit up there in Lake Tahoe, around the lake, whether it's Nevada or California. And it's because the same type of clientele that are farming or hunting or want to live out in the country, they seem to also want to have a mountain house.
Yeah,
so
right.
That's why I do that too.
Awesome.
But that's my focus area.
Got it. And I like this is. I think this is going to be a good question because I think there's probably a lot of people that kind of fantasize about, when I retire, or I'm sick of living in this little suburb. Man, I'd love to have like something with some acreage, maybe a little vineyard on it or something. The hobby farm, right? What we call it, we know as a hobby farm.
Yeah.
If someone was thinking about going that direction, like maybe selling their home and buying a hobby farm to kind of start dipping their toe in the water of that country lifestyle, that hobby farm lifestyle, what's some things to look out for, would you say, like as a potential buyer of a property like that? Because you've got so much experience in helping people with this. Like, what are the kind of things you bring them into? Like, oh, you want to buy a hobby farm? No problem. Here's some, but here's what we're going to kind of look for. Like, do you have like kind of a list, if you will?
Because it's definitely different, than the residential house that they're used to, and I don't know if it's rocket science, but it's water. Water is huge, right? No matter what you're going to do, if you're going to farm or have a cow or a horse or whatever, or just want to be able to live there and drink it, right? You got to have good water, quality and quantity. And then these routes have really even focused that more so, right? Highlighted the level of that. Because there's places that don't have water, right? Or they gone dry and stuff. So I mean, it's understanding water and wells, how that all works. The the nuances on country property and access, whether it's easements or county road, who maintains roads, all that type of stuff. Septic is always unique to rural properties when people are living on a hobby farm. Because it's so used to just flushing the toilet, right, and don't think about it anymore, right? But in the country, you don't have to think too much about it, but you have to make sure it's a good system, because it could be a big problem if you don't do it right. but it's understanding, I think, a lot of that stuff, the zoning rules, what you can and can't do. Everybody assumes you can buy a country property and do whatever you want on it. Well, that's not true. And every county has its own little rules. So it's really understanding a lot of that stuff in government. What are your rights of property ownership, right? And what do you have to look out for? And if you're going to do a certain type of farming, it's, farming is not just something you just do, right? If you don't have bug problem, you got heat problem. If you got heat problem, you might have a rat problem or a hog problem. Everybody ought to go watch the, someone told me to watch this recently, and I did. It was the greatest. The Biggest Little Farm.
The biggest little farm.
Biggest Little Farm. I think it was Netflix deal. If you just Google Biggest Little Farm, it's quite entertaining, and it's real.
It's real.
People that bought this hobby, and it was a big size hobby farm. It wasn't just small. They went all in, but about all the trials and tribulations. It'll scare some people. Might not want to buy that hobby farm, but I don't think so. If that's your love and your passion, you want to be outdoors, you'll get all jazzed by it, I think, actually.
Yeah. So I imagine you've helped a lot of people get their first hobby farm kind of going, haven't you?
Yeah, and the buyers are all kinds. It's the young families just starting out that just want to, raise their kids in a different world than than on TV, right? And, so it's those guys, and it's a lot of people that are retiring. We're fortunate we're close to San Francisco here, so a lot of that Bay Area people, they retire from these tech jobs and what have you, and they really have always wanted to be on the farm. They just happen to can't leave because they make too much money. But it's amazing how many of those people are retiring and want to have that farm, which is cool. And they may not be for the same reasons. They may not be having chickens and everything, but they just want to be able to live in the nature, basically.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Can you do me a favor? Just tell me like a couple that you've done recently, like a couple of transactions that you've closed recently, like what they were, and like who the seller was and who the buyer was. So I think people get kind of even a better understanding of this type of real estate and what goes on.
Well, let's see. The most recent, I closed one last week. It was Tahoe home.
Tahoe,
and it was a ranching family down here in Solano County. Actually sold a piece of property and wanted to have a vacation home, right? Maybe Airbnb it too. So that was a really nice home in Tahoe. It's kind of the extension, what I said earlier about the extension of that clientele, that if they're already lifestyle livers, then they want to have more of it, right? So I mean, that was my most recent, but just sold a 100-acre farm right here in Solano County outside of Woodland that, again, a young family just want to get out, has a barn on it, has a little house. They're going to add on the house, and the kids wanted chickens, and they might want a horse one day, but at least they don't want chickens, and they want to grow their own vegetables. And
so you said it's 100 acre, they bought 100 acres.
Yeah.
And does it already have crops on it, or is it just zoned for it so that they could do whatever they want?
It was traditionally farmed, part of it rice and part of it just open hay ground. They're not planning on, they're going to just lease out on those bigger ones. A lot of people want 5 acres, 20 acres, but on those bigger 100-acre ones, typically they'll lease out the majority to a farmer, unless they really want to be a farmer. Most of these people aren't farmers per se, so they'll lease the big bulk of it and keep their little part to do their life on it.
Well, you just opened up a whole can of worms for me. So what you're saying is that's possible. So you could buy something like that, a 100-acre farm, have your little country living house and barn, and then you can lease out the land to a farmer or farming company to let them go ahead and farm on it.
Exactly, and you can do that a lot of ways. You can just lease the land out to them, and they do everything. You just get a rent check at the end of the year, right?
Yeah.
Or you can get a property manager, and you can be more involved in it if you want. You want to make sure you maintain the water part, or you can be as involved or uninvolved, or sharing the get a price break so you're guaranteed so much every year, or take the risk of the farmer, do a crop sharing, where, yeah, if the crop is good and the prices are good, then you make more.
That is fascinating.
Or it's in the toilet, then you don't make much. So you can structure it a lot of different ways. And there's a lot of good farmers in the areas that, they want to have more land to farm. Because it's a matter of scale. And so if they already have a whole bunch of land, but they can add another 50 acres right next door, it's good for everybody that way. Right.
That is fascinating, man. So that's pretty, would you say that's kind of common for
very common.
bigger parcels like that? Really?
Very, very common. Yeah.
On this particular one, was there already like a kind of a lease agreement in place before they even bought it, or something?
There was, but it was a year-to-year deal, so they're able to either go with that same guy or get someone else. It looks like they're going to experiment with that same guy, make sure they get to like each other and understand it, then maybe probably extend it long term. I'm sure that'll be what'll happen.
So cool.
Yeah.
And so
that property actually had a little cannabis thing going on it. Cannabis hit the market 5-6 years ago. A lot of these counties were giving permits out, and then it didn't work for a lot of people because the government taxes, all this stuff, a whole lot of reasons, right? So
right.
So the neat thing about this one, it actually has not any cannabis on it anymore, but it has some facilities, a shop already, and some areas where you can grow their own vegetables and stuff like that. Little greenhouse.
Right. So a little bit of infrastructure that came with it.
Already, yeah. And that's big, when you're buying a country property, what infrastructure do you want to have, and because it's costly to have infrastructure. So
yeah,
if you buy a piece of property $1 million, well, you better make sure you realize it may be $1.5 million before I get to use it, right? Or 500,000 million to 550, right? I mean,
right. And this is the kind of stuff where your expertise and experience plays out so well for someone, isn't it? Where you get that person and they're like, yeah, I want to do something. And you're probably probing them like, well, what do you really want to do here? And then you can bring up, okay, well, you're probably going to need this, you're probably going to need that. Maybe they didn't realize these types of things.
Right.
Yeah.
No, big time. I think that's kind of the neat part about dealing with those people in that property is that I feel like I am helping, because of the experience.
Yeah, it really is. It's super, super cool. Golly gee, how about another one maybe that you did? What's the biggest parcel you ever sold?
The biggest parcel I ever sold was 1,000 acres almond orchard.
No way.
Yeah. And that was the biggest one. That 25 million was the sale price of it.
Yeah.
Was on the market quite a while to find the right buyer.
Yeah.
We had the offers, and these a lot of when you get those big, you get these big old conglomerate groups, and
sure.
they got money, but they want to have a 60-day due diligence, and they want their team, not knocking them, but it's just a long drawn out process. So after a little while, this one guy stepped in, older gentleman, checked him out. He had the money and wherewithal. He came out and he goes, hey, I'd like to buy this farm, really like it. He went and looked at it. And he wrote up a simple contract. He didn't believe in all the contracts, even though he had an in-house attorney. Wrote a one-page offer. Hey, I need 1 week of due diligence, and I'll close in 3 weeks. And he came out and looked, and he had all his experts, and he had a whole week to do his due diligence. And after one day, he goes, you know what? This thing's got a few problems, but since I'm up here, you think I can close this tomorrow while I'm up here? So it went from fast to whatever, but that was the biggest one I've ever done, and it was the smoothest just because it was the right type of buyer, right?
Wow. Do you find, like, if somebody wanted to sell, if they did own something large, a couple hundred acres, 200 or 300 acres, do you find that the bigger stuff like that can tend to be a little smoother sometimes because of the nature of it all, or or it doesn't matter? I'm just curious.
No, the bigger ones, when you start getting into several $1 million, you got a pretty sophisticated buyer. They've been through it before, I think, and so it's not as emotional. That's the good and bad part. It's kind of fun to be in some emotional ones, because it's exciting, right?
Right.
They're excited too, and And so a lot of those are cash, even the bigger ones, or exchanges. That's a whole nother big part of that world that
Mm,
we deal
mm,
with is 1031
mm,
exchanges. That's very common in my world. Uh,
mm.
Someone selling a ranch, you're going to buy a exchange into something else and make sure we got the timing right, and all those type of deals. And but yeah, to answer your question, of those bigger ones, tend to, I mean, especially if there's not a lender involved, not picking on lending, but I
Sure.
mean, there's a lot of criteria there. And so
Yeah, yeah,
anytime you don't have that, it's smoother. But
yeah,
but it could be just as smooth, with the financing and everything else, where everybody's eyes open. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, really cool stuff, man. I super
yeah,
super dig it. I'm just curious. It about this, like just for you personally in your career. You've been doing it for 16 years. This is your niche. This is what you focus on. How long did it take you to get? Obviously, at this point, you have an enormous amount of confidence, right, in being able to understand a property, understand how to list it, what to list it for, right, knowing what to expect, from a buyer coming in, all that kind of stuff. How long did it take for you as a niched agent in this arena to kind of gain that confidence? Like how many transactions did you have to
yeah.
do to
Probably,
finally feel like I got this? I
yeah.
got
Well, I've
yeah.
been doing it 16 years. I'd say probably about my 15th year, I got a little confident. You,
Terrific.
it is somewhat true. I mean, because you would think every deal would be the same, right?
Yeah.
Every property, every deal got something different about it. I mean,
Yeah.
it may be one thing or 100 things, but like today, we're dealing with this morning. I'm dealing with um, when a property, an old ranch hasn't sold in a long time.
Mm,
There's usually, title reports weren't done for a long time. No one
mm,
cared, right? Been in the same family for generations.
mm,
So invariably, you better get a title report very early on the state. Don't wait till you get
mm.
an offer, right? Because we'll
Right.
always find old gas lease, mineral right leases, right? Because
Mm.
people own the mineral rights, they leased it to. This one was Standard Oil back in 1956.
No.
Two or three other ones, other companies. It's always nice when it's a big company because they have departments handle. But you get into, Joe's oil well service from Denver, Colorado. I mean, anyhow, they record memorandums of leases on title when they do these. And some of them are 50 years old, 70 years old, 30 years old. Well, the owners, they forgot about it, right?
Mm,
And so you got to go through all this process to, figure it out, get it up, get a hold of the company. It's just a lot of work, right? And so,
mm.
well, today that was what the title company pops up, and God darn, there's three of them on it. God darn it, because they take a lot
Wow.
of time to deal with.
Oh,
You
I'm sure. Yeah, you got to hunt that down and get it all figured
know?
out and
Yeah.
all that
In
and all
mineral
that.
rights, most people don't understand mineral rights, so that's a whole other thing. Surface rights. What do if someone else owns the mineral rights? Which a lot of people, mineral rights is one of those few items that can be separated from land, right? So you buy a piece of land, you may or may not get the mineral rights. Those can be separated from the land. Okay,
Really?
just like air rights are now can be separated, right? You can sell your wind turbine rights separate from your property, but yeah, mineral rights. If you Unfortunately, in the Depression, when a lot of people lost their land to the Bank of Italy, Bank of America, whoever, I see those on a lot of deeds. They foreclosed on a lot of land, and then when they resold it, they kept the mineral rights, the banks, and so
Really?
in a lot of areas it doesn't matter because there's no gold or oil sitting here, so it's not that big a deal in a lot of areas. But there's some areas that, hey, if you're in an area that's got some natural gas or something, you better make sure you want to know who owns the mineral rights, right?
So that's fascinating. If you have a if you own a, so let me understand this. So if I own a property, but yet some company owns the mineral rights to this, does that mean they can just traipse onto my property and start digging around and poking around in there whenever they want, or what does that mean?
There's some variations of the type of mineral rights, but if it's a carte blanche, the guy owns the surface rights, owns the underground right. There's two lot. There's mineral rights under 500, below 500 feet, and then there's mineral rights to top 500 feet. Uh,
Okay.
and um, and if they own, and it depends on how the wording and all those rights are done, but technically, yeah, if someone owns all those mineral rights, they can come to you and say, hey, um, I need to drill on your property right here. They got to restore it. They can't damage it. They can't pull your house out. So, there's got to be some mutual respect there, right? But they can technically take and then take your oil from under your land, and it's theirs. It's not yours. It's theirs. And yeah, it is very interesting. And then the top 500 is where you find the metals, right? That's where you find gold and silver. So, who owns that? And it's not as common to see the what they call the surface rights reserved by other people, but 500 feet is very common. You see someone else owns that. Most properties are not owned. A subdivision, no different than a house in town. People don't realize it, but if you look at your deed of house in town, somebody else owns your mineral rights. And
really,
that's a small little sliver.
No kidding.
Yeah, under 500 feet.
Yeah, under 500 feet. Yeah.
Fascinating.
So
so there's just a lot of that's just every time you talk, you think of something else that's unique, and that's what I like about I think the farms and the rural properties, the lifestyle properties, is they're just all, I don't know, they're all unique, and you better go through that little checklist and make sure you know everything about it, because it's so easy to burn on it. Not burn, just a surprise, right? No one likes surprise.
Right. Get surprised, right? Well, that's why people need to come to a guy like you. Right. If we're going to be honest, that's why it pays to talk to Curtis Stocking. If you're going to be looking into any kind of a property like this, buying or selling, do you find, speaking of selling, do you often, or not often, have you ever pick up listings, just like you said, oh, I'm picking up this listing and it's been in the family for generation after generation after generation, and now I'm picking it up to somebody, whoever owns it now, wants to sell it. So they would be like a first time seller of, you can have a first time buyer of a big property like this, or this would be a first time seller of a property like that. Do you get those type of customers too?
Oh yeah. And that's very emotional for them, right?
Really? Yeah.
Because it's been in the family for literally 5 or 6 generations, a lot of these properties.
Wow.
And
wow.
So just an emotional tie, to, what would great grandpa, want us to do with the land, right?
Right.
And,
right.
And when they say that, well, great grandpa would probably tell me not to sell it, I always challenge that. I said, I think great grandpa would say, do whatever you want.
And you're probably right in reality. You're probably
But some
right.
people don't sell. I get that a lot. Half of our job is knocking on the doors to see if someone wants to sell something, right? And not just trying to find a buyer for it. And
right.
And it's amazing how many people don't want to sell because of that, which is cool, right? That's tradition. It's neat to see that.
Sure.
But they just it bothers them that no, it's been in the family that long. That's the only reason not selling. They could be broke, no money.
Right. I'm not selling this house. Yeah, I'm not selling this property.
Right.
What percentage of the listings that you get would you say are that scenario, which their first time they've been in the family for generations?
Quite a few of the farmlands and ranches.
Yeah.
The bigger properties. A lot of them are that way. Because this whole area has been it was settled way back when, and and it's just been passed on and farming families, and unfortunately the economy on some crops is forcing some sales. A lot of it is just because the people got other desires, right? The kids, the grandkids, they don't have a desire to farm anymore, right?
Right.
For good, bad, or whatever reasons, right? And so why hang on to the property if no one's going to enjoy it or use it or what have you?
Yeah.
But a lot of those bigger properties are been in the same generations for many years.
Interesting.
Yeah,
that is really interesting. We're in our area, just for anybody who's watching us on YouTube or listening on iTunes or Spotify or whatever. We are in the Solano County area, Curtis and I, and we are literally just surrounded by this type of property, aren't we, Curtis? There's an awful lot out here, isn't there?
Oh yeah. And the neat thing about this area, we're in one of the best areas for climate, soil types, water. We have it very good here. We not all lands are equal, but a lot of big areas that have really good stuff.
Very growable.
Yes.
out here. Yeah, we have a lot of ag out here. So, Curtis, man, this has been just absolutely fascinating to me. I've loved every bit of it, man.
Good.
It's been
Good.
awesome. Hey, if somebody was looking to buy some either a hobby farm or some ag land, or a farm, a property like those guys that bought the 100 acres and they could lease out the farm, cool, so cool. Or if they wanted to sell something, if they've got something they feel like, yeah, it's been in family for generations, but I think it's time to let it go. What's the best way for someone to get to you, to reach you for this?
Call, cell
Call?
phone.
Yeah. What's the number? What's the number?
707
Yeah.
761 3343. And it's easy to find everybody on the internet now. Just type in the name and find it. But I always answer my phone. I'm as close to everybody who has a phone. That's how close I am to you right now. All you gotta do
That's
is
right.
call. If I don't answer, I'll call you back pretty quickly.
Pretty quickly. Yeah. So I'll get that number.
I've learned that in real estate, that if you plan on selling or listing something, you have to answer your phone. Voicemail's got to be.
Love it, man. And it's so true. It's so true, man. And it is. And yeah. So I'm just reiterate the phone number: 707-761-3343 to get a hold of Curtis Stocking. He is your guy out here, Solano County, Yolo County, right? A little bit of Napa here and there. You can drag him up to Tahoe if you're nice to him, right? He's your guy to help you out here, and just a wealth of knowledge, wealth of experience, and what a great podcast. That was super, super fun, man. Thank you, Curtis. I appreciate you, man.
That was fun. Yeah. I'll take you out on my next showing to some beautiful ranch, and then you'll get the bug.
Love it. I would love to do it. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and get on out of here. Thanks everybody for joining us at the Buy and Sell Real Estate Podcast. It's always a pleasure to bring professionals here to lay out what's going on. And this one in particular is quite a cool one, man. I really, really enjoyed it. So until next time, guys, catch us here. Do us a favor, subscribe. So you always get updated on what's going on here in the Buy and Sell Real Estate Podcast. And do us a favor, share this with anybody you think might be interested in learning about ag land, farmland, hobby farms, mountain property, that kind of thing, because obviously Curtis is a wealth of information. With that, we'll get on out of here. Curtis, once again, adios. We'll see you.
See you later.
And for the rest of you, we'll catch you next time here on the Buy and Sell Real Estate Podcast. We'll catch you guys.